How do you win at work without losing yourself in the process? That's what today's guest did. She quit her successful corporate job where she was leading and coaching nearly 28,000 women to become a speaker and coach. Make sure to stay tuned until the end. You'll love Martine's episode. Welcome to the Courage to Be podcast. I'm your host, Tanya Vasallo. And each week, I will bring you amazing guests so that you can tap into the courage to break out of old patterns and live your soul's purpose. Before we get into this episode, if by the end you enjoyed it, please follow, rate, review, and share the podcast so we can reach more people. Because here's the thing, I'm on a mission to close the gender gap in the podcasting world so that more and more women's voices are heard. If you feel that this is something you value too, then please take action by rating, reviewing, following, and sharing the podcast. We can only do this together. Check out the link in the show notes to see how this is done. And make sure to stay until the end to claim some free gifts I have for you. Welcome back to the Courage to Be, where we have powerful conversations to transform your life and your business. And today we have Martine Williams with us. Welcome, Martine.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I love the title of your podcast and the mission that you're on. So thank you for including me in that.
Oh, well, since you're saying that, what attracted you about the title?
Well, one of the things that I do and I'm passionate about is helping women to be more courageous, by understanding who they are and be able to stand firm in the gifts that they have to bring to this world and have that confidence and that courage. Not only the confidence, but the courage to take action, knowing those things. So yeah, we can know a lot of things, but it's that implementation that takes that courage, right? And so I think we need more courageous people in this world that are willing to just step out and without knowing all the answers.
So yeah, on that note, tell us a little bit about your journey and how you left, because you were in corporate, successful career for 15 years, and then you decided no, I'm going to pursue coaching. And that takes a lot of courage in itself to just quit your successful corporate job, and I know there's listeners out there that might be in a corporate job that are like, I'm ready for a change. I want something different,
Right.
How did you do it? What's your story, Martine? Share with us your journey.
Yeah. I know we only have an hour. There's so much to my story. So I'll try to keep it brief, but I was actually in direct sales for 15 years. So not really on the corporate side, but I definitely had built a very successful business, led over, 20,000 women I was leading on, a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And I loved what I was doing, honestly. But in that, I learned coaching was a huge passion of mine. And on paper, it made 0 sense. And so I want to say to the listeners, it's like trying to make it look perfect on paper to make that pivot or make that change. And for me, I'm a woman of faith, and I just knew that I was called to a different assignment. And that chapter in that book was time to end. So it was an easy decision to make. I mean, I didn't go into it flippantly at all. I mean, I definitely sought counsel and just, my husband and I had multiple conversations, just talking with people that knew me. And yeah, I mean, just taking that leap of faith and finally realizing that there were more women that I wanted to reach than where I was. And I had been coaching. I had built a personal brand and a coaching business kind of on the side from my career that I was in for 15 years in direct selling. And honestly, it was really hard to do both. And so for the listener that's thinking about doing multiple things, people can do it. You just have to know what your strengths are and know, is that a fit for me? And after 3 years of doing both, I realized that my passion truly was in the coaching business and in the speaking business. And I wasn't able to give that the attention that it needed to grow because I was focusing on the opportunity that was paying the bills when really the other thing was the paycheck of the heart. It was what I was most passionate about. And so again, on paper, it made no sense. And sometimes even now, because it's only been 2 years, I look back and I'm like, did I really do that? Did I really leave the secure, safe, comfortable, income producing, career? But, you just know that there's an opportunity out there. And if you've done it once before, you can do it again. And so that's where I'm at now. And I love coaching women. I love speaking at events. And yeah, there's so much more to that story, but I can't say that because people will call me and they'll say, how did you do it? Or what can you tell me? I'm like, everybody's story is so different and your circumstances are so unique. And I've never just say, pack up and go without having some information and making sure you're making an informed decision. But I will say it won't always feel like it's the right decision initially. It's still going to be hard. Transition is hard. Change is hard, right? Being courageous is hard. It's an uncommon decision that you make to choose courage. And that's what I had to do because I knew there was more women out there that I needed to take care of.
Wow, so many nuggets in here. Let's just start peeling it a little bit, and just dive deeper, Martine, because as humans, we don't like change, like you're saying, and that's where the courage comes in. If you're being called to something bigger, how did you know that it was coaching, or that you wanted to speak? Like, was that you woke up one day and you thought of this? Were you inspired by someone? Like, what was your journey in that direction?
It was already things that I was doing in my business. So again, leading a large organization, I was coaching women every week. Being a top leader in the company, I was speaking at events. So I knew that those were things that I was really good at, and they were things that I really enjoyed doing as well. I've always been someone like encouraging others is my superpower, which is what makes me a great coach. And I have the experience of building a successful business. So that's, I can help someone do that because I've done it. So it was really just, those were the things I was already doing that I felt the most joy in. And so it just seems like that is what I thought would be the next season. I will say that initially I felt really called into a season of rest and reflection, and then kind of moved into a season of preparation. So I didn't just jump from, hey, I have this successful career and now I'm going to jump and build another one. I had already been building that, like I said, kind of side by side, but I really felt strongly that I was called to rest. And that was hard because I've been working my entire life. I mean, my dad had a restaurant. I was always the one he called when someone called in sick. So if you're a child of an entrepreneur, you kind of fill in the gaps there. So I'd never really had a season where I wasn't going after something, right? Going after a goal, going after a trip, going after the next thing. So it was different, but I'll tell you that it was so needed. I didn't realize how much I needed it until I was in it. And so rest, reflection, and then I kind of like preparing, like, all right, what's next? Like, is it coaching? Is it speaking? And it just was the next best thing, really. It was really like just where I felt like I needed to at least try. And if the doors close, the doors close. And so far, the doors have just been opening. So I know it's the right decision.
That is awesome. Let's go deeper into this season of rest, because I know many of us can identify with this idea. Just go, 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 push, 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 do, like that's what we've all been conditioned and programmed to do. We actually wear it as a badge of honor. It's like, oh yeah, pat on the back. I get, look how good, look how productive, look how busy I am. And what happens to a person like yourself, with your personality that you've been pushing, you've been doing all these things, and suddenly you choose to rest and reflect. First off, how long was that period? And how did that feel for you? Was it uncomfortable? Like, how did you deal with something like that? Like, I can't even just imagine for myself. So please share.
Yes, it's definitely uncomfortable. And I kind of relate to like someone who's never been or hasn't been to the gym in a really long time, right? Those first few workouts, they're tough. It's hard to get to the gym. You're sore. And it's just uncomfortable walking into the gym the first time when you haven't been in a while. So I've been on mission for a long time to help entrepreneurs to not be in burnout and to take care of themselves. So I was already doing some really great things for myself for self-care, because that's something I'm really passionate about with specifically entrepreneurs, mompreneurs. But to go from like go to nothing. So I would say it was more of an active rest. And it was actually a friend who reminded me of this. Like when you're exercising, like they sometimes take you through active rest where you're still moving, but you're not going at that, breakneck pace. Right. And so while I would say I was in a season of rest, I didn't just sit around, lay around on the couch. And I really tried to use it wisely to journal. I had always wanted to journal, but never created the time to journal. And I just didn't know like what to do with a blank page. So I was kind of still learning how to process all of the feelings, all of the emotions that went into me transitioning out of that career. Honestly, thought I would never leave that company. And so I kind of had to grieve that a little bit, right? I had to kind of grieve not being a part of that, even though I knew it was the right decision for me to move forward. So it was definitely hard, definitely uncomfortable. And again, I didn't realize how much I needed it until I was about halfway through. And I will say I had agreed upon, my husband and I's kind of joint decision was 6 months. Like we would give me 6 months to do this rest that I felt called into. And it was longer than that. But it wasn't, it kind of went from rest to preparation. So that's when I started kind of getting back into, okay, what would it look like this next season, this next career? I know I'm not going to sit around and garden all day or, just do these things. But, my son is also a senior this year. You and I were just talking about this. He just graduated. So there were a lot of things going on the home front as well that I felt like I was really excited that I had the gift of being 100% present with him to really be in that space, right? And enjoy all those moments with him. So when I say rest, I was still doing things. I just wasn't on that entrepreneur hamster wheel that we can find ourselves on, where you're just constantly going after. And, for entrepreneurs, this, it's the thoughts, right? Like you can't ever turn your brain off when you're an entrepreneur, or it's really hard to, because you're always thinking about new ideas, new ways to reach new people and to help people. And your current clients, you're trying to think, how can I better serve them? So to have that 6 months to where I wasn't thinking about that was restful for me. I needed that mind rest to just focus in on my family and focus in on me. And yeah, it was amazing. And it's a gift. And I am so thankful that I was given that gift, and that because we've been good stewards with the income that we did have all of these years, I was able to do that. And I know that's not something everybody is able to do, but I do want to say you can find those pockets of time, whether it's on the weekend to recharge and refuel and rest. Like you can find the time, you can make the time. You probably won't find it. You'll have to make it and create that time, but you don't have to have seasons of 6 months to do what I did. You can do this on a daily and a weekly basis.
And you said that you turned off those ideas and entrepreneur thinking, but for anyone that's listening, I think what might sound scary is, shoot, if I'm not busy, if I'm not producing, if I'm not doing, what do I do with all the emotions that show up?
Yeah.
And one of them you mentioned was grief. So how did you deal with these emotions, whether it was grief or other emotions that might have bubbled up that needed to be taken care of? Because my guess is when you give yourself that period of time, and luckily, I have to point out, Martine, I think the fact that you chose to rest and reflect, even though it was an act of rest, you might have saved yourself from something bigger stopping you and like smacking you in the face and saying, hey, I've been trying to tell you to stop and listen a little bit, but you haven't. But going back to this, how did you deal? Okay, so you've turned off that switch. No more ideas, entrepreneurship for now, because they came later. But how do you deal with all the other emotions that show up?
Yeah. Definitely by the journaling, just getting my thoughts out of my head and onto paper and really just feel them. For me, I have been a person over the years, I tend to avoid emotion. And that was really something that I had to go through about 3 years ago when I injured my knee and I had COVID. I was very sick with COVID. And that was honestly the catalyst to this, even thinking about transitioning out of this career into the unknown. Was when you're that sick and you're not sure what's going to happen, it gets your attention. Like, am I spending the time doing the things that I want to do and that I feel called to do, and being with the people that I feel like I want to be with? Like, it really does get your attention. So like you said, something big could have happened. It did happen. And that was really the transition for me that got my attention to even be thinking about, am I using my time wisely? Am I doing what I know I'm called to do on this earth? So after all that was made, it really was the journaling, it was praying, it was, my close group of people who walked through that transition season with me. And I'll say, if you're feeling the need to make a transition or pivot, you're going to need your people, and you're going to need the right people who are wise, who won't tell you what you need to hear, but what you want to hear, but what you need to hear. And that can just encourage you on the days when you're like, crying because you're like, did I make the right decision? Right? Is this crazy? Because the thoughts you're thinking, especially if you're doing like what I did and leaving a very successful, secure place, even now people would say I'm crazy, but I knew that I knew, right? I had that certainty. So I exercised, That's definitely something that helps me on the daily basis with any type of emotion, whether it's grief, fear. I had a lot of fear, honestly, that I had to deal with. And I spent a lot of time outside. I live someplace where we're warm a lot of the time. I actually was gardening. My word for that year was cultivate. And if you look up the definition of cultivate, it's like bringing up the old so that you can bring in the new. And I feel like that's what I was doing. I was working through old ways of thinking, old ways of doing, and preparing a place for new growth. So that word really helped me together. And I just journaled a lot and was open and talked with people. That's really what helped me. I'm a people person. So I knew if I isolated myself, I would go downhill pretty quickly. So
That's smart that you have that awareness that to not isolate yourself
mm-hmm.
and to also see that the fears were showing up. And as those fears showed up for you,
Mm-hmm.
what were some of the fears? And were they justifiable, or once you passed through them or broke through them, did
Mm-hmm.
you realize that they were just made up fears? How did you deal with those? Did they show up through the journaling, for the exercise? What were some of the fears that you went through?
Yeah, I think fear is real, and you just kind of, for me, I have to just face it head on and really like, okay, where is this coming from? What is it? Is it the doubts? And for me, it was like, even though I knew it was the right decision, I knew that there were going to be some challenges ahead. Not having the income that we had was going to be a challenge. And how long could we go? And what if something else happened, right? It's all the what ifs. And that's where the journaling helped me, because in those moments for me, I have to look at the facts and not so much on the feelings, right? The fact is we had been really good with we've been good stewards with the money that we had made. And so we did have time, I didn't have to rush into something else. The fact is, yes, it didn't make sense on paper, but I know I made the right decision. I just had the peace that surpasses all understanding. So really, I just get a piece of paper. I'm like, okay, here's the fear. What's the fact and what's the feeling here? Right. And then just work through those feelings. And sometimes I just had to sit in the feeling, and that's not fun, but sometimes it's needed. And that was really the lesson. Like, I got to quit avoiding the feeling and just sit in it for a minute and allow it to do whatever it needs to do. And if it's going to serve me to move forward, great. If it's not going to serve me to move forward, then I'm going to kick it to the curb, because I don't have time for that self-sabotage and all that stuff.
That is so good, though. I'm a big journaler. I've been doing the, morning pages thanks to Julia Cameron since like 97. But I think we can become so aware when we write. You have to get rid of all the crap, like there's like, today I'm feeling like this and so upset me or whatever, like those are
Right.
my kind of conversations in the first couple pages of
Yeah.
journaling.
Yeah.
But then you start peeling that onion and going deeper with that journaling. So I love that helped you, identify it and just realize fear or fact, and move from there. But you mentioned at the beginning that in your previous position in corporate, you did sales, and things that you were good at was public speaking, sales, coaching, and speaking. I mean, talk about fears. Share with us, how do you overcome the fear of speaking in public? I enjoy it.
Yeah.
But it's up there with the biggest fears that most people, 99% of the population face. Don't they say it's death, taxes, and public speaking? So how did you overcome that, Martine? How do you realize you're good at public speaking and get over the fear? Or does the fear still show up and you do it anyway?
Definitely the fear still shows up and you do it anyway. And I think for me, it comes from, I just care, right? I care so much about the audience that I want what I have to say to really help them. And so I wouldn't say it's a fear, it's the sense of responsibility that I have every time I take the stage or come on a podcast or speak anywhere. I feel such a sense of responsibility to not waste people's time when they're listening to me. And I could say that now, but I will say, I had to take theater and speech twice in college. That just tells you where I came from. So it was not something I looked forward to. I definitely never thought, if you'd have told me 16 years ago, I would have stood on a stage in front of 13,000 people. I'd have said, you are crazy. But I did. And it comes from doing, just like anything else. You're a beginner in the beginning, and then you just get better the more you do it. But my coach, when I first spoke on a stage, it was like, I guess there was going to be 500 people in the audience. And I remember texting her when I walked in the room to kind of see the room ahead of time. And I was like, oh, wow, like I'm on a big stage. Like this isn't like one of those little riser stages. Like I'm on a big stage in a big room. And I wanted to like come down sick with something because I felt sick to my stomach. And I called my coach and she was like, Martine, if you're nervous, you're focused on the wrong person. And that has always stood with me. That if I'm nervous, I'm focusing on my words and what I'm going to say, as opposed to the people in the audience who need to hear what I have to say. I was asked to speak for a reason, and someone needs to hear what I have to say. So as long as I'm focusing on that, like the whole idea of picture them all in their underwear, that doesn't work. That does not work. It doesn't calm your fears at all, because you only see like the first row anyway. So it really was just realizing how much I care and how much I want to encourage and inspire other people. That's my superpower and it's my passion, that I just stopped thinking about myself and was just like, I'm here because I want to help other people. And if I make a mistake, I'm not perfect, and no one in the audience is either. And they don't know what I'm supposed to say. So if I mess up, no one's going to know but me, right? Unless I trip on the stage. But so that's how I overcame it, was just continuing to do it and just not focusing on me and what I can do to help others.
That is just beautifully said, just the continuously doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
you've made a point and a reference with this at the beginning. You talk about taking action. And right now you just said about doing, like
Mm-hmm.
how do we overcome confidence, and how important is taking action?
Yeah. I mean, action brings clarity, and clarity brings, confidence, and more confidence creates more action. I just like a little circle. That's kind of how I like to teach that. Like you have to take action to gain clarity on whether did that work or not work. Did they like that joke? Did they not like what I had to say there? Right. So action brings clarity. And then when you have that clarity, then you have confidence. But it came from taking that first step, that first messy, imperfect step into the unknown sometimes. And then the more you do it, the more confidence you get. And then when you're confident, you do it more. And so it's just a cycle that a great cycle you can do over and over and over again. But it starts with taking that first step onto the stage, that first email you send out, that first podcast episode that you do. I mean, none of us are perfect when we first start. And there's a lot of dreams and a lot of great impact that I think are left on the table by people who are just afraid to take that first step. There's so many amazing things that could have been, right? Because someone was afraid to take that first step. And I don't want to be that person. So
Good for you. What's been something lately that's required confidence and courage for you? Do you have any stories lately of something that you've done that had to require your, pulling in from that courage and knowing that you were?
I would say just the whole rebrand process that I'm in right now. I built a brand and did pretty well with it. And now I'm realizing I want to kind of do some rebranding, and I want to kind of hold on to that other baby because I spent so much time on that. And people have known me for that brand. And now I'm kind of in that process. So that to me feels a little bit scary because it's new, right? It's a new brand. It's kind of a new focus. For me, the other one is still there, but so that's kind of scary to kind of put yourself out there and launching a new website. I've never had a website. So for those of you like, I have to have a website to be successful, you do not. You can make money without a website. Don't get hung up on all that stuff. But now I'm in the season where, yes, I feel like I need to have a website for people. And so this will be the first like major website that I've ever had. And that feels scary because people are going to be looking at it. I'm sure they're going to have thoughts about it. They're going to maybe like some things, not like things. For me, true, full transparency, even though I've been in sales for 16 years, when it's your own baby and it's your own product, that's always scary to me. I always feel like I have to really flex my courageous muscles to talk about not just what I offer, but then this is the investment. So that's always been, for me, I can get up and talk all the time. I can offer all kinds of free trainings, anything to help you out. I will do it for nothing, but I'm in a business. So there is a price tag for doing business with me, right? And so that's always the hard part for me, if I'm being really honest, is just really talking about the investment.
Thank you for your vulnerability with that and sharing that piece, Martine, because I think you're not alone, obviously.
Yeah.
You've been successful at sales, but the question is, how different is it from selling someone else's work or product or services versus selling your own services? Because I'm sure you sold millions of dollars when you were in this other company,
Mhm.
but how do you balance that out? Like talk
Yeah.
about fears and
Yeah.
having courage and just doing it and doing it and doing it and just building that confidence.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that, like the
Yeah.
difference of sales, of someone else versus your own stuff.
It's very different, but it's only very different because, and I've learned that this year, like in the last 3 months, it's only different because I'm saying it's different. It's only different because that's the thought I've been telling myself.
The
And
distinction.
yes. And so as soon as I've started to really change my thought, like it's not, it's really not different, Martine. That's an excuse you've been saying, the thought you've been believing so that you don't have to take action on it because you're afraid of what others may think. And that is like being as raw and real as I can be. But I know there's someone listening who has felt the same way about the process. But whether I'm selling, personalized totes, which I did for years, I sold the opportunity, which I did for years. And I did in the beginning, the shift I had to have was from selling to serving. If I could tell myself I'm serving others by offering them this opportunity to join me on my team or to purchase this tote because it's going to make their life more simple, then I had no problem. Right. But it was when I felt like I had to be that pushy salesperson. And I know someone's listening who feels like they have to be pushy. People don't like pushy people. But if you flip that script in your mind that you're serving someone else and you're actually doing them a disservice by not sharing with them what you can do to help them, those are all the mindset shifts I've had to have and still have to have, especially now that I have my own products that I'm offering to others. But like I said earlier, the more you do it, the more confident you get. And you get that first yes, and you get that second yes, and you get that third yes. And you're like, wow, okay, yes, this is valuable. People do want this. People do need my help. And then you get testimonials of how much you are helping them. And you're like, okay, then this is good. But you still have to do it when you don't feel like when you're scared, right? I still had to put myself out there. And even now with the new brand, I'm having to put myself out there. And some are going to like it and some may not, but that's okay. I'm not for everyone. I'm for the person who needs me and she's out there.
That is awesome. Such a great point. We are not for everyone. And sometimes we feel like we want to serve everyone. We're like, no, but my service is everything I can do is for everyone. And it's such a great reminder that you're not. There's going to be people that love you and there's going to be people that hate you, that they're like, oh, I can't stand her voice or,
right.
Whatever it is, I don't like how she dresses, whatever their trip up is. So thank you for sharing that, because I think it's important for all of us listening and reminding ourselves of what we are really capable, that sales is serving. And honestly, we're constantly selling, like even with our kids, anyone that's a mom knows that here's how I see it. It's either my daughter's selling me or I am selling my daughter. And she is persistent and she always has her points. And so I have to remind myself of that when we're negotiating, everything's a negotiation, like what time or bedtime? No, well, can I do 15 minutes more? No, can I do this? Can I do screen time? And it's like, oh my God, you are going to be the top salesperson in whatever company you want to do. So it's such a reminder, like when we do get tripped up, like you're saying of like, oh, I'm selling my services now. We're constantly selling ourselves. Either we're selling or we're being sold to, like I said,
that's right.
By your kids.
That's right. That's right. And it's when we allow our emotions, because it's just like when it's your baby. Like when I was a leader with the other company, I didn't create any of those products. So I didn't take it personal if someone didn't like it. I'm like, okay, you don't like it. But when it's your own baby that you've been like producing and growing and, building and putting all of your blood, sweat, and tears into, and then like you don't get the sale or whatever, it just feels different. So I'm not going to say it doesn't feel different, but you can overcome that by changing how you think about it, which is what I've had to do the last 3 months. It's really not different. I'm just telling myself it's different because that's keeping me safe, right? That's what our brains want to do. They want to keep you safe. And when you're trying to create a new brand and put yourself out there, then you have to step out and be willing to not be liked. And as a former people pleaser, and again, I'm a people person, So I want to be liked, and that's okay that you want to be liked, but you have to understand that it's just not for everybody. Focus in on who it's for. And there are plenty of yeses out there, and there are plenty of no's. You got to go through the land of no to get to your yes, and you have to be okay with that.
That is so true. Oh, so true. What's your definition of success, Martine?
Progress. For me, if I can see that I'm making progress, that feels successful to me. And that's what I've seen working with my clients. Like, one of the things I talk about is progress over perfection. And so if I'm making progress, then I'm being successful. Even if it's small, slow and small progress is still progress. So if I'm seeing that, then I feel successful. And it's different for everyone. And I think that's important for everybody to listen to hear, is how I define success is maybe different than how you define it, but you have to learn to define it. If not, you're going to be on that hamster wheel and you're going to be going in directions. You're like, I don't even know why I'm going in that direction, because you haven't clearly defined what success looks like for you. Flexibility is another piece for me. I feel very successful when I have the flexibility and have the options to do the things that I want to do with my family and have the freedom of the time, right?
That's great. Yes, like you're cultivating your own lifestyle of like, how do I want to, and it goes again, like what you're saying with success is such a subjective term, even though we've been conditioned and programmed that success has to mean, go to college, get married, have kids, have the white picket fence, be at the job for X amount of time. But that might not be what you want for success. It doesn't feel right for you because you're looking for freedom, or like you're saying, our lifestyle, like what kind of lifestyle are you looking for right now? Like, what does your ideal successful life look like with your business to you?
Well, the season of life that I'm in, you and I just talked about this before we started recording, my son graduating, going off to college this year, it felt very successful for me because I was able to be present, as present as I wanted to be with him. Yes, I was still working. Yes, I still had coaching clients, but I was able to work that around my family. My family comes first, and that was really important to me. So I would say even now, he's going away to college. So I want to be able to be present and go to the games, right? To have the freedom and the flexibility of my schedule to not only be able to be there in time, but also have the resources, the income to be able to go and every weekend travel to Columbia and go to the games and buy the tickets and hotel room and all of that. So that's kind of where we're at right now. I have another son too. I haven't mentioned him yet. He's 15. So he's going to be a sophomore in high school, and he's amazing. So, he'll be gone in 3 years. So again, when you kind of have those moments when you're realizing you're in the second half of your life, if you haven't read the book Halftime by Bob, I think it's Bob Buford, he talks about this. And that was a book I read during that rest season. And it really, you kind of shift from a life of success to a life of significance, is what he talks about. Like in your first half, you're striving for that success, right? Like you just said, the car, the house, the trips, the whatever your definition of success is. And as you get later in life, it's like you're shifting to significance. And that has stuck with me because that's exactly how I felt when I decided to move careers, is that I wanted to be more significant in this world.
That is so great. What's the name of the book again? I have to look that
It's
one
called
up.
Halftime. Halftime by Bob. I think it's Bob Buford is his last name, or I think it's
I'll look for that.
Fford. It's really good. And then he has another, like a sequel, I guess, to the book that's, I forget what it's called, but it kind of helps you kind of live out that second half. But it's really, really great. It'll get you thinking for sure. It'll get you thinking for sure. Yeah.
So, Martine, let's talk about perfection and perfectionism that you had just mentioned a little while back. I know you were saying progress versus perfection. I've learned to apply that one too. Where do you think that perfectionism comes from? Is that some form of fear too? And how do we overcome it?
It's actually an interesting question, because the work that I do with my one-on-one clients now is I take each one of them through a survey called the Pro Scan, and it really helps me to illuminate their true gifts and their true strengths, and also shows them in real time, like how they're doing and who they're becoming at this season. We all have different seasons of becoming, and you may have to be, more of a leader in certain seasons, and in some seasons you may have to dial down your dominance. So it's very detailed, one of the best personality and performance assessments or surveys I've ever seen. And one of my clients has really struggled with this thought of perfectionism. Like, she saw it as a weakness. And we talked about this the other day. And I said, you care about the details. And so you've been labeling yourself a perfectionism when really you just care about the details. You care about a job well done. That's a strength. And when you can reframe that in a strength, then you're able to honor your gifts and utilize your gifts. So I think it goes back to the thought we have around that word. And if you can see it as someone who cares about the details, but not use it as a reason to procrastinate. So a lot of perfectionists, procrastinate because it's not perfect. And I've done that in the seasons of launching courses and launching the podcast and launching my new brand. Even now, it happened to me the other day. I was, because my website's not ready, I wasn't even talking about my coaching and the people that I know need it. I wasn't talking about it. And I finally just went out on social and I was like, I have fallen into my own trap that I tell people not to do. And I've been waiting to have the perfect website done, the perfect emails, all of these things, when really someone out there needs what I have to say, and they need my coaching and they need this tool through the ProScan to help them to stop being so hard on themselves and to stop the burnout that they're having and to really use their strengths to build the business that they want and not compare themselves to someone else. And so, kind of going back to your question, when I was working with this client through this, she was like, I have always seen that as a weakness. And so it's just how you frame that thought around the word. And most people on the ProScan, when they show up as that high detail oriented person, are usually the people that people either call a perfectionist or they call themselves that. And there's such a negative, right? A negative thought process around that word. Perfection doesn't exist. It keeps you from starting. If you're trying to make it perfect, you're not going to start. You're not. So take that from someone who's tried. And it wasn't until someone said to me when I was launching my first course and, I was supposed to go live that night and kind of announce it to the world. And I was really fearful of what others would think because I had this huge influential position at the company and I didn't want to cause any, riff or any fears about what was going on with the company. I just really had this passion to help women to stop burnout and to take care of themselves and not feel guilty and all of that. And I was talking to my friend. I said, I'm supposed to go to live tonight, but I'm not ready. It's not ready. I don't have the right this. And she said, you are selfish. And I was like, I'm the least selfish person I know. What are you talking about? And she said, you're trying to make it perfect. And because you don't think it's perfect, someone's not getting the information they need to help them. So you're being selfish with your own information. And that lit a fire under me. I literally got off that phone call and hit the live button and never turned back. And we need those people, right? They can call us on our blind spots and call us out and call us up. And when we get stuck in our own thought process. So I was definitely trying to be perfect before I put it out there.
And I'm sure you put it out there and there had to have been at least one response.
Oh, there was a huge response. I mean, I literally was in tears. I was like, what is wrong with me? Why was I so worried about that? Why people don't care about all of those things, right? They don't know what all it's supposed to be. Yes, there's some tried and true things we need to have in place, and you want people to have a smooth and easy process with you, but we're harder on ourselves, especially when it's your own product, kind of going back to what we talked about earlier. You want them to have a great experience. You want them to understand. You want them to have all the things, when really people just need to know who you are. They need to know that you care, and they need to know that you can help them. That's it.
That's the bottom line. Amen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So true. Going back to burnout, you've mentioned burnout a couple times, and it's a much more prevalent theme subject that's showing up more and more. I hear it more and more. Do you feel women are experiencing burnout differently than men, or that there's more women burning out than men, or what's your take on that?
I don't work with a lot of men, but I do have men that reach out to me and like, I struggle with this too. It's not just a female thing, but I do think I'm going to say this gently, but I do think as women, we put higher expectations on ourselves. It used to be the woman just took care of the house, right? But now we're taking care of the house. We're taking care of our businesses. We're the PTF president. We're the Uber, doing all the things. And a lot of that comes from not clearly defining, like we talked about earlier, what is success for you? for your family? What are the priorities for you and your family? And when you have not clearly defined those, you're going to let the culture just take you down and take you on that hamster wheel and on that roller coaster. And that comes from not slowing down long enough to really sit and think, okay, in this season right now, what do my kids even want from me? What am I expecting of myself that they're not expecting? What does my business need to look like? I talk a lot about harmony versus balance because I think balance is a trap, because I can't ever say in all of my years that I had 50% of my time with my family and 50% of my time in my business. It's never an equal 50-50. So it's not balanced, but I can find harmony knowing there are certain seasons where I need to ramp up my business because it's a busier time of the year. And then, like I just said, this last year, my son's leaving the home in August, and I wanted to be really intentional about spending more time with him. And so I was not spending 50-50 on my business and 50% of my time with him. I was probably 80% because of the season I was in too. But so it's just finding that harmony. You think about a symphony, you have large instruments playing, and then you have really loud and really often, then you have little flutes and little soft instruments that are playing, but they have harmony when they're playing together. So stop fighting for balance and just start creating that harmony and communicating. These are my priorities. Have conversations with your family about what's most important to them. And I think fathers need to have those same conversations. Men need to have those same conversations because it is an epidemic. I mean, it's really become the norm that we just are supposed to live like this and be exhausted all the time. And I 100% do not believe that we were created to be like that. We're human beings, not human doings. And somehow we have gotten that messed up, and we've decided that we just need to do. And a lot of it is to avoid real life situations that need to be dealt with. And you can sweep it under the rug as much as you want. But if you think about your house and you're sweeping dust under the rug, when you do it the first day, it's probably a little bit. The second day, it's a little bit more. Third day, a little bit more. And eventually you have a big lump in that rug, you're going to face plant. So we need to stop avoiding through the busy, right? Avoiding the things that need to be dealt with because we're busy. And you said it earlier, we were busy as a badge of honor. Like, look at me, I'm Miss Dependable, I'm Superwoman. Well, you're actually a super worn out woman probably. And you just don't want to pause long enough to sit in that and make change, because change is hard, even when you know it's good change and that you shouldn't be doing all these things that everybody's telling you should do. We start shooting all over ourselves. You got to slow down and figure out what's best for you.
Oh, you said that so beautifully. And I love this whole idea of harmony versus balance too, because I do believe like balance is just like overrated, like it's never going to happen that way. As well as I love your clear distinctions of what season of your life are you in? Like, are you still operating as a mom of a toddler when your kid is already a teenager? Like the needs are very different,
Very different.
and the
Yes.
same with your business, like where are you in your business right now? Are you in startup energy? Are you in acceleration energy? Or do you need team and support? Like, we really do need to stop every so often and pay attention to what season are we in? How long is it going to last? And where is that harmony for those things? Oh, you just said it so beautifully. And it's such a breakthrough for myself just listening to you with that, Martine. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
So I hang out mostly, as far as social, I hang out mostly on Instagram. So you can find me at Martine31 Williams. And then my website is going to be martinewilliams.com. So that's probably the easiest places to find me right now.
And we'll put these links in the show notes too, for anyone that's listening while walking or multitasking or going in the car or something. What's one thing that our listeners can do to live a life with more courage?
I don't know why this just thought came to me. I don't know if it's because we just watched the movie Air, but just do it. And the Nike slogan. I mean, you just stop overthinking it, and just take that first step. And I promise you there will be clarity there to take the next step and the next step, and it'll get easier, and your courage muscles will be flexed, and you'll be excited. I will say the times that I've been the most fearful to do something, when it was over, first of all, it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. And secondly, it got me excited to do something different again, and to flex that courageous muscle. It brings out that confidence. They go hand in hand for me. They go hand in hand. The more courageous I am, the more confident I get. And then the more confident I am, the more courageous I get, right? So they go hand in hand for me. We just got to do it.
Thank you for that, Martine. Thanks for your time. Thanks for being with us today.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This was awesome.
I am so grateful that you joined me today. If you enjoyed it, there's one thing I'd like you to do. Click on the follow button so you don't miss a single episode. Leave me a rating and a review, and please share. As my way to thank you, email us a screen grab of your review at the email in the show notes, and we will send you a free Crafting Your Future guided visualization, which is so simple to do with outstanding results. It will empower you and give you the confidence to attract and create the life you've always desired. See you in our next episode.